the bad guy. I'm the
Hello everyone and welcome back to Across the Gridiron. I am Matt and I am once again joined by my friend and yours, Eddie Equo, to break down what was again a very dramatic Week 10 in the NFL. So Eddie, my friend, how are you this week?
I'm doing good. I cannot believe it's November already. It's welcome everyone. Before I go on, but it's come very quickly. But did you also see the John Cena picking up the Grand Slam title, the Intercontinental? I was wondering if they were going to do that. Sorry to digress a little bit into wrestling, but
you've already given a promo for the podcast that we're yet to actually start across the squared circle, and I like the way you've already lost half of our audience straight away. And that must be a new record even for us.
And I'm sure there are lots of people that love both wrestling and NFL. I mean, there are always NFL players showing up in wrestling. Kittle, is a few times. Gronk, obviously showing up at WrestleMania too as well. So there's a lot of synergies between the NFL and the WWE. But the games last weekend were really, really good. It was very nice to watch the NFL with no tension after all. The Cowboys didn't lose the game, which was great. And I was able to kind of like take it all in, just watch, the beauty of the NFL, teams collapsing in the fourth quarter, teams getting shut out in the second quarter, by a ridiculous amount of points. So no, it was a good weekend to stay out of the NFL for the Cowboys, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, at least this week we're not going to have an epic Cowboys rant from you this week. And Jerry Jones may not even be mentioned, which is great. But look, yeah, it was another fascinating weekend, and I think now, as we're getting, obviously we're over sort of halfway now, we're seeing a lot of the standings and we're seeing the season take shape now. Yeah. But I mean, there's still lots of up and down still coming. I think there's a lot. Nothing is quite set yet. I think it's fair to say, unless you're in the NFC East where everything is set. But what we want to do today, we're going to focus to begin on this. Look, there were loads of scores. We'll break down. There were shocks. The Dolphins actually won a game. There's, as Eddie mentioned, there were some.
I don't know what's going on there.
I mean, nor do I. But we'll cross all that. There's some amazing fourth quarter comebacks that I'm sure we'll touch on. But we're going to start this week. We're going to start on a division that we haven't really given a huge amount of coverage to over the past couple of weeks, and that's the NFC West. Now, the reason why we're covering this particularly because there were two key divisional games that happened, and it's shaping up to be one of, if not the tightest division in the NFL. So we're going to focus on that to start with. We're going to start with what certainly looked like at first a blowout victory for the Seahawks against the Cardinals. And this was, talk about coming out of the blocks. Seahawks absolutely blew out the blocks in this one. Was it 35 zip up? While they're still in the second quarter. Obviously, things, Cardinals came back a little bit in the second half, and the final score was 44-22. But this was an absolutely crazy game. And I know you want to talk specifically more about what this means for the Seahawks as a season, and if they're being underrepresented, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean, the Seahawks were really, really good. Sam Darnold has taken that magic potion, all the way from Vikings to the Seattle Seahawks. Maybe he is the X factor. This is like, when you're talking about like X factors in the game, he's literally the definition of an X factor because, he goes to the Vikings, gets them that incredible season. And it seems like he might be doing the same thing in the Seahawks. This game was incredible in terms of how quickly the Seahawks, came out of the blocks. And here's a public service announcement, right? If your team plays the Dallas Cowboys and your quarterback looks good, don't celebrate, because you might just not be playing a quality defense. And I think that's what the Cardinals found out, when they played the Seahawks, because everyone was kind of looking at them like, oh, the Cardinals might be something here. Jacoby Brissett, might be doing something. It was the Cowboys. Calm down, right?
So can I just flag that? That's taken 5 minutes for you to mention the Cowboys. I mean, okay, on a week that they are in a bye week, it still took you 5 minutes. I mean, that's impressive even for you, Eddie.
Right. So no, but let's just talk about the Seahawks, right? This game was what you want to see in complementary football, because both parts of the ball came to play in the first half. Marcus Lawrence, say not a Cowboy, but he had 2, touchdowns, and I think this has not been done in a very, very long time. I don't remember what the stats is, but it goes a way long time since someone has scored. The same player from the defense scored, 2 touchdowns. So this game was, practically over in the second quarter. Sam Darnold didn't have to be Superman. He didn't have to do anything great. He just needed to be efficient. Don't turn the ball over, as much as possible. He had a few close shaves. But, get your balls to your playmakers. JSN, and we did this, very early on in the season when we said, he might be the wide receiver to watch, in the season. And he's been everything but that. He's literally, driving this team, forward. And then, of course, you've got, other people who are jumping in. And that's the beautiful thing about what the Seahawks have done. When they sent Geno Smith to the Raiders, people were thinking, well, he looked like a good quarterback. Why are you sending him away? Why are you, going for Sam Darnold and paying him over $100 million, right? Giving him a 3-year contract, when it seemed like the Vikings didn't want him. And I'm sure the Vikings now will be thinking to themselves, oh, should we have kept, Sam Darnold? Would he have certainly been better than Carson Wentz, what Carson Wentz has produced in the Vikings. So the Seahawks are a team that are really interesting to me because, right now they're up there in the seedings for the NFC. The Eagles just don't want to lose, and they just, find new ways to, depress me with how they just annoyingly keep winning. But I am curious about the Seahawks, and I really want them to play a very good team. Of course, we're going to get that, when they do play the Rams, because obviously they're in the same division, and we're going to talk about the Rams as well. But you just want to have that a little bit of confidence that this is not fluff, for the Seahawks just because of the opponents that they're playing. And, are they a team that can really make some noise in the playoffs?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think the most impressive thing about the game for me is, as you mentioned, scored 44 points, took that massive lead in the first half. Darnold threw the ball 12 times.
I know.
He threw it.
He threw the ball 12 times. He threw the ball 12 times. But those 12 times, there were a lot of yards there.
They were.
I remember Cooper Kupp, running down the sidelines like a madman. Smith and Jigba also doing his thing. But that's ridiculous, right?
Yeah, it's insane to have 10 catches out of 12 attempts for 178 yards. So that's nearly 18 yards per successful completion. That's crazy, right? 1 touchdown, 1 interception, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, it's to score normally when you see, I mean, we've seen it with, I'm doing it now, but we've seen it when we talked about the Cowboys this year, right? Yeah. And when they've had their big games of 40 plus points, it's because you've got Prescott hurling the ball and everything goes through him. But this shows that, I mean, you can get not quite 200 yards, but after, only 10 completions. But then you've got a lot of people rushing. You've got, Charbonnet, 83 yards, Kenneth Walker the third, 67 yards. So they are spreading it out. You had 4 players ran for more than 20 yards. But it was such an efficient win, I would say, this one.
It was like a German performance, as they say.
Absolutely. I mean, the Cardinals had more passing yards than the Seahawks.
That's kind of like a pop quiz question. Like, you would say, which of these teams would you, based on their numbers, do you think won the game? But I mean, there's a lot to be said that, to be fair, when you're already that many points, in the second quarter.
Oh yeah.
You're throwing a lot more, and so your yards, you could be considered to be garbage time. Didn't they run for like over 40 attempts in that game? The Seahawks. It was ridiculous, right?
Mm-hmm. I haven't got the rushing attempts here. I do have the rushing yards, so it's nearly 100. It was 198 rushing yards. So look, I mean, it was just incredibly efficient. But look, this is what they need to do, and they're against a divisional rival. They're against the weakest divisional rival in the league, but they do really well. I'll come on. We'll talk about the Rams next. I want to come on how you think this actually affects the entire division in the NFC as a whole. But let's just move on and let's talk about the Rams and their victory over the 49ers.
Yeah.
So this game ended 42-27 in favor of the Rams. Again, this was good, and I think the Rams, certainly a quarterback, are probably one of the most informed teams in the league at the moment. How did you see this one?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect this game to be that lopsided as well. So it was very lopsided in the first half. For some reason they just forgetting that McCaffrey was on the pitch, and you saw a few sightings, of Kittle. But they brought the game a little bit closer in the second half. McCaffrey was running with the ball a little bit more. Kittle was carrying grown men across the field, as you do. And Mac Jones, threw an interception at the worst possible time, in the game. And all interceptions are not equal. When you throw an interception in the first quarter, when you throw an interception in the fourth quarter, it makes a difference, especially when the team, takes that and goes and scores on the back of that. That is just a killer. Absolutely. But Matthew Stafford, looking really good. Certainly right now, probably, the MVP that people might not contest about, because I think, every other person, you might argue there is some sort of question about their MVP credentials, whether it's, Daniel Jones or whether it's Jalen Hurts. People will say, well, he doesn't have enough passing yards, he doesn't throw as much, he doesn't look that great. Patrick Mahomes, people might be thinking, well, actually the Chiefs have been up and down. The Bills just suffered a loss, so nobody might be looking at Josh Allen for a second right now. And then, Lamar has literally been off, the whole season. So Matthew Stafford right now has got a real claim on the MVP. And Sean McVay, it just shows you, how good and great a coach he is. Because the transition players, they built the team again. They've been they're very similar to the Eagles a little bit. Maybe without some of the splash, free agents, signings that the Eagles always do. So they always get into the spotlight. And they don't have that one player like Saquon that just, or AJ Brown that just goes buckweiler. Although Puka Nacua might say, well, hold on a second, don't forget about me. But they just have a good system with a quarterback that the coach trusts. They've got a competent, defense that makes plays when they need to make plays. And hey, they're going to lose games here and there, but they're not going to get blown out, in games. They're always going to be in with a shout. And if they hang around to the fourth quarter, they can be dangerous, right? every quarterback in the league, has, bad games, right? So everyone has had a bad game this season. No quarterback has had a completely flawless season. So, but then you look at the coach, you look at, being into the Super Bowl a few times, been there twice, won once. You kind of look at them and say, I think these two teams, I think you can probably book them to come out of that division. I know we were talking about the NFC North, as a division that potentially might have three teams coming out of that, but maybe it is the NFC West. Maybe it is the NFC West is that division that at least certainly is going to have two teams. But don't count on the 49ers, right? Because even their record right now, it's not looking too shabby, especially, in the conference. They're 6-2 in the conference, so that's still gonna, add up for something. 3-1 in the division, even better than the Seahawks or the Rams, but that's also a function of the fact that, the Rams haven't had too many division games because they are 1-1 in the division. But, the 49ers are going to still have some hope, because they're only like, say, a one game back, so to speak, from the other guys. So maybe we're talking about the NFC North. Maybe it is really the NFC West that might be making that run into the playoffs.
I think the reason why we picked this league this division size is how close it is. And I was reading an article today on The Athletic about sort of reevaluating where the NFC is, right? Because this is some big games. And looking at who were the favourites beginning of the season and where are the favourites now. Now they've ranked, or they've looked at the odds of all the teams in terms of what are the odds of them reaching the Super Bowl. Don't worry, Eddie. The Cowboys are at 0%, right? just so you know. The Athletic are discounting the Commanders, the Giants, the Cowboys, the Saints, and the Cardinals at 0%, right? Just so you know. But the three teams you mentioned, you've got the Rams, the Seahawks, and the 49ers are all in the top 7 right, of the highest possibility chance to make the Super Bowl. The favorites, according to this supercomputer, is actually the Rams, right? So going into the season, Eagles were the favorites. They are second favorites. They've 19% chance, according to this article. The Rams are the favorites at 29%. Seahawks third at 18%. So this division is going to have a huge say on who gets to the Super Bowl, and winning this division is going to have a huge say because the person who wins this division could well be the top seed, right?
Yeah.
And the team who comes second, even if they end up having a 10, 11, 12 plus season, are going to be in the wild card and will be playing their games away. So automatically have to play another game. They're away in tough conditions and all this kind of stuff. So whoever wins the division is going to have such a huge say in who gets to the Super Bowl. Now, in your opinion, obviously as someone who follows the NFC, do you think the Super Bowl winners are going to come from that division? The Super Bowl winners, sorry, the NFC winners, Super Bowl contenders, are they going to come from that division?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at the AFC, right, and I look at the teams that are all, at the top of the seedings right now, we're talking about the Colts, we're talking about the Broncos, we're talking about the Patriots. Do you trust those teams? And I think that is the biggest question, right? Currently the Chiefs are out of the playoffs, right now. So you've got the Bills who have shown some vulnerability. And I remember we were talking about them at the start of the season when they had that crazy game with the Ravens, and it was nobody could stop, anybody in that game. But I don't know. Like, I look at those teams and I'm like, Denver Broncos have been winning, but very unconvincingly. Bo Nix isn't exactly blowing everyone away. He sort of has like 20 minutes of good, performance in a game. Either it doesn't show up in the first half, shows up in the second half, and their defense, which is really good, does that. But if the AFC wins this, it's going to be based on defense. it's going to be, doing what the Denver Broncos did to the Panthers, a couple of years ago when Cam Newton got to the Super Bowl, and Von Miller and the Marcus Ware just wrecked, that game pretty much. So I wouldn't count out the NFC, though it pains me to say, if the Rams get into the dance, I think they're going to be dangerous. And I would probably say the winners come from the NFC.
Okay, but do you think the Super Bowl? So my original question, which I originally butchered, is: do you think that the team who gets the Super Bowl in the NFC is coming from the NFC West?
I think so. I think so. I think that, I know the Rams didn't have a great showing when they played the Eagles, but I think the playoffs are very different. And last year, the playoffs, they were just one play away, from making it to the Super Bowl. And I think that McVay is a coach that learns, from past, mistakes. And I would trust Matthew Stafford than Jalen Hurts, right, as a quarterback. We don't know what's going on with, AJ Brown, whether he's in the Eagles or he's not. Some games you kind of see him appear. Some games they completely ignore him, so you don't know whether he's there or not. So I don't think he's going to be in the Eagles player next season. I think, he's probably going to go. So I don't know if that Eagles team, their defense has to be on top. They have to do what they've just done against the Packers, right? Because I think that, if the defense is not doing that and they play teams that, are actually very good, like the Rams, so the Rams can beat you with both skill players and scheming from the coach. So yes, if the Rams get in, I probably trust the Rams more than the Seahawks, right? Just because of the quarterbacks. So, but I would say that I would tip the NFC West to get that representative in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think the final stat will just leave you on, obviously, that both the Rams and the Seahawks are on 7-2, as are the Eagles. But both the Seahawks and Rams have the highest net points in the NFC. So Seahawks are over 100, right? 103 net points, whereas the Rams are 98. So clearly it's working on both sides of the pitch for them. But let's move over. Let's move on now. Let's switch from the NFC to the AFC, and let's talk about the shock of the weekend. Now, obviously, I'm wearing the cap today, but I almost feel like I can't celebrate this because I'm still like, what on earth actually happened? Divisional game. This was Miami somehow not just beating the Bills, but dominating the Bills in terms of the scoreline, in it, 33-13. Now that this happens, divisional games happen, teams could not turn up, so the team will raise their game. But this was just weird. I mean, the Dolphins have been a team on their knees pretty much all season. The Bills haven't been as dominant as we thought they would be, and maybe they are feeling the pressure by a very much resurgent Patriots team.
Yeah.
But the Dolphins just ran all over them. Literally ran all over them. Achane was just absolutely on a tear. The Bills' running defense was absolutely diabolical, really, which for me, this raises more questions about the Bills than it does questions about Miami. Because I just look at this last week we were praising Buffalo to the hill. They played one of the big AFC rivals, a team who constantly stops them getting into the Super Bowl, and they turned over the Kansas City Chiefs. They turned them over, looked great. Okay, they've lost 2 games, but they're right on the Patriots' coattails. They'll take them soon. And then you go to divisional rival who are 2-7, a divisional rival who you have won, I think 16 out of the last 18 times you have beaten them. Right. This is a team you dominate. This isn't the Dolphins against the Patriots or Dolphins against Brady, where Dolphins will pull out a few wins. The Dolphins don't win against Buffalo, and you lay a complete egg. So as much as I am celebrating the success of Miami, because it is great at a very poor season to show up and get a good win, gives us some hope going forward. But bigger picture for the NFL, this raises serious questions for me about the Buffalo Bills. How did you see this with your non-Dolphins hat on?
I mean, what are you doing? Why are you not celebrating? I mean, listen, this is your rival. There is no love lost.
No.
I mean, can you imagine what I'll be doing if this was the Cowboys versus the Eagles, right? I would be like, I don't even know. I'll be getting new costumes out. I'll be definitely getting the pom-poms out, celebrating. I don't care whether, there's some games like, about like the North London Derby, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't care what really happens as long as you beat those guys. Like those guys down the road, you need to beat them. So no, you gotta celebrate. The Bills absolutely shocked me completely. I was watching it in disbelief. And to show you how bad this was, right? So if we look at the plays, of the Bills, it was first play punt, second drive, they gave it up on downs, third drive punt, fourth drive fumble, then punt, end of first half.
Yeah.
They scored no points. Come back in the third quarter, interception. So no points in the first 3 quarters. They did not score a point.
No.
And then in the fourth quarter, they scored, a touchdown, and interception. But by then, right, this is garbage ass, right? Well, I mean, you're not doing anything in the first 3 quarters. Don't tell me, that you suddenly woke up in the fourth quarter and then you wanted to come and do something incredible. I have never seen, the teams, well, I don't want to mention the Cowboys because you're going to say, but I guess because I follow the Cowboys, a lot, I've seen this sort of thing happen where you go into a game that you're like, I did not see this coming. I mean, the NFL is hard, right? So nobody just goes in there and expects to win games. But when you're a team that is clearly better, right, you certainly go into games with a bit of swagger, a little bit of swagger, right? You didn't just lose the last game. You beat the arch rival, the Chiefs. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe playing the Chiefs where they brought their A game and they absolutely gave everything, emptied the tank, and just could not get themselves, for this game because we're playing the Dolphins, they're not going anywhere very fast. And those kind of teams are the ones that are dangerous because they have nothing to lose. Like, the Dolphins went into that game like, hey, listen, right, we're just going to play as crazy as we want because we don't care. Everybody thinks we're not going to go away. I mean, in the first half, Tua was throwing bombs. The first touchdown was a bomb down, over to Waddle. And you're just like, okay, it's like, I was thinking, well, I thought you throw Hail Marys at the end of the game. He was like, no, I'm going to let the ball fly, and, be it what it may. Yeah. And the last time I saw Tua play like this was, a couple of seasons ago, when he was in that MVP conversation and Tyreek was almost going for 2,000, yards. And he was just getting the ball out. There was like 70-yard touchdowns, and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, the Dolphins believe they're going to run the table, right? Aren't you feeling confident now that the Dolphins are going to do a Brady, in the box, run the table, take you all to the playoffs and beyond?
No.
I was expecting a little bit more.
No. It's a nice thought. It's not happening. Yeah. I mean, look, it was, as you said, look, so you this season in Miami, you celebrate the small wins. You celebrate every small victory that you can get. We've only done it 3 times this season. And it has been it's been a very poor season. So it's nice to win. It's nice to win against divisional rivals. It's nice to put. It's one of these things. It's kind of nice to put a dent in Buffalo's hopes, but at the same time, we're not doing anything other than making the Patriots stronger. So it's not like,
Yes.
you know, I mean, what? I mean, bloody. I mean, even the Jets won this week. So I mean, it's not like we're really pulling up any trees. But look, as I said, this is a shock for Buffalo. I've read a lot about their run defense just not being able to cope with Achane, and you know he was superb. But there are better running backs out there. If you get to the playoffs, you put yourself against Jonathan Taylor against the Colts, you forget about it. But yeah, I mean, look, it was it's a good victory. But let's just quick question as we stay on the AFC East. Just a quick thought on the Patriots, as I mentioned, won once again against a Tampa Bay team who we thought would give them a bit of problems, but in the end, I mean, Drake May again looked great. The Patriots go from strength to strength, don't they? And they won 28-23 in the game.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this game was very, very close, right? You know, you can see from the final scoreline, it wasn't, two teams that were very far apart. And you could probably argue that, the second quarter was what, killed the Bucs in this game. But then you would think that with the second quarter, you still have two more quarters to then recover and do something. But both teams, it was edge of the seat kind of thing, right? Even in the fourth quarter, the Bucs were mounting a comeback, as
they do.
Mayfield always does, yeah. And then he throws that interception, and again, it's when you throw those interceptions at the worst time of the game, because what you don't want is to do stuff in the fourth quarter that is just ridiculous. And the Patriots threw an interception in that fourth quarter, and then you're thinking, what, we can do something. But then then Baker Mayfield, I mean, that sequence of play, the interception, and then they had a couple of miscues, and they end up turning it over on downs, and then the Patriots go and score a touchdown. Even though the Bucs came back and scored a touchdown, it was already a little bit too late. Now you're already 2 scores down with not enough time on the clock to do anything about it. But yeah, it was. I was surprised by the Patriots, but maybe because I've got a little bit of bias, on the Patriots, just based on the fact that they haven't really been good for a while, since the Brady era. And I know we did that, whole thing looking back at the Patriots. So go check out our channel. That was really, really good. But I think maybe we need to start looking at the Patriots differently. Maybe we need to start looking at them as, okay, they're a team that are potentially going to cause some problems. I don't think people will want to play the Patriots in the playoffs.
No, I mean, at the moment they're up there for sort of top seed at the moment, and yeah, I mean, the more things change, the more things stay the same. I mean, I think, as I said, Drake May actually had a great game. He actually only got like a 50% completion rate, but still 270 yards, right? Yeah. Which, so they've got their franchise quarterback now. Is he going to be successful as Brady? Probably not. But then who else is going to be successful as Brady? But yeah, so the Patriots go from strength to strength. Certainly one of the shocks of the season. Shock teams of the season. We had them at the beginning of the season. We talked about them being in a battle with the Dolphins and the Jets for second place in that division. And boy, we were right. It was in a battle, but the battle with Buffalo, I think. But let's stay in the AFC and let's talk about the international game. Let's talk about the Colts, who once again won. I'm just trying to pull up the score. Yeah, so Atlanta Falcons, 31-25. This was again another great showcase for the international audience, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was a great show, and obviously this was in Germany, over in Europe. A chance for them to get a bit of that NFL energy as well. And thankfully, this was a game that they could enjoy, right? So it's always a little bit tricky, when you go to international games and you kind of, wonder, especially places where, like in the UK, I think we're a little bit resilient. If we come, we had some terrible games this season, right? The Broncos and the Jets game. I think who can forget that game, which was an absolute, horrible show. But you always want a good product, to go out there. So, people seeing touchdowns and stuff like that. And this game, lived up to expectations. So I don't know if they saw that this would be a good game when they initially put out the schedule. I don't know if anyone really thought the Colts were going to be this good. But they certainly, delivered. But it was funny, right? Because the Colts went 2 quarters without scoring any points in this game, and obviously went to overtime, and then the Colts won it in overtime, and it's kind of very strange about some teams like the Falcons, right? Because we know that they're not very good, right? They're not. Their record is. I mean, they went into that game 3-5, right? But they were hanging around, right? They were hanging around, in this game for a long time. The fact that it went into overtime, just kind of tells you a little bit how crazy this league was. But I think overall it was a good game. It was early on here, so I tried to watch the game because it was around 2:30 in the UK when the game started, which almost caught me, by surprise. Because somehow in my head I forgot that was happening in Germany, so it will be an earlier, start time. But no, it was a good game, good performance. The Colts, got back on the horse, as it were. They weren't going to do what they did, in their last game, where they were just giving up, the ball to the other team. I mean, if the team throws the ball to you, you're not supposed to throw it back. So,
Yeah. Well, it was an interesting game because, I mean, as I said, we both had the Colts to win this, but we thought it would be not as close as this. The Colts obviously lost their last game, and we thought the Falcons would be an ideal opponent to try and get back to winning ways. That ultimately they did.
yeah,
But let's not forget, it went into overtime because the Colts kicked the field goal with 30 seconds left on the clock. So they weren't that far away from losing the game.
no,
But at the end of the day, they got through it. Daniel Jones had another solid performance, but he's not the guy we need to be talking about in this game. There's only one person we need to be talking about in that Colts team, and that is the guy who is surely almost odds-on favorite to win the MVP at this rate, and that's Jonathan Taylor, right? 32 carries, 244 yards, 3 touchdowns. The guy is an absolute machine, and he is. We talked about Stafford probably being the most informed quarterback, in the NFL at the moment. Jonathan Taylor is the informed player, the best player in the NFL this season at the moment, and he was just unplayable, wasn't he?
yeah, he was Jonathan freaking. Oh my goodness. He was ridiculous. I dare say that he's is it outrageous to say that Jonathan Taylor is better this season than Saquon was last season?
It's probably early to say that, but I don't think you
Is it outrageous? Because I think he scored more touchdowns than Saquon Barkley. And okay, to be fair to Saquon Barkley, he could have scored more touchdowns, but the bloody Eagles would just go and do the toothbrush every time they got within the end zone. So to be fair, most teams, Saquon Barkley would have had a lot more touchdowns, so I've said that. But having said that, I still think that this is ridiculous. And I think he's pacing to go over 2,000 yards right now. And I don't think that the Colts are any illusions that they're not gonna do what the Eagles like. If I'm the Colts, right, and I'm Jonathan Taylor, I'll be saying to them, hey, listen, right, on the pace that I'm going right now, I can hit that 2000, right? And so let's get, if you want to rest me in that last game, because we're going to get into the playoffs, right now, make sure that we get that record with 2 games to spare. And if he keeps running the way that he's doing, he's probably going to do that. I mean, 240 something, that's ridiculous.
244 yards. It's certainly his biggest of the season, but in terms of total yards he's got so far, 1,139. Right.
Yeah.
So he needs another 800 with change.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a tough ask, but he's got over 100 yards in 5 games this season.
Yeah.
Against Denver, Arizona, Tennessee, and obviously now Atlanta. With kind of the one, blemish on his record was ironically last weekend against Pittsburgh when he only ran for 45 yards.
Yeah.
So he could get the 2,000 yards, and if he does, then without question, the Colts are probably the surprise package of the season. If they get to the playoffs, which I think they're no doubt going to get into the playoffs really at this rate. If they get to the Super Bowl, Daniel Jones has been great, but it's easier to be great when you've got such a weapon in the running game, right?
Yeah.
Because it opens things up. The defense, you can have the play action pass, which teams are going to be coming much closer to the line to try and stop the run. Then you hit the play action and get those yards. But yeah, look, the guy's an absolute machine. Just want to quickly, how long we got left? So, a couple of interesting other games that I think is worth highlighting quickly is Jacksonville somehow found new ways to lose.
Yeah.
At the weekend by trying to get it up here.
We're 19 points up in the fourth quarter.
19 points up in the fourth quarter against the Houston Texans, and they somehow managed to lose that game 36-29. In their last, here's a stat for you, Eddie. They're in the lead, 19 points up, right? They give up 26 unanswered points in the fourth quarter, which is mad.
Yeah.
And in the last 9 plays that Jacksonville had in that game, they had a total of 9 yards in 9 plays. They just couldn't get it done. And to make matters worse, they've just announced not long before we went on the recording, actually, Travis Hunter's now out for the season.
Oh.
So it goes from bad to worst for Jacksonville. I mean, have you got 30 seconds on them you want to mention?
I am just flabbergasted. Those are the kind of performances that get people sacked and get people fired. And speaking of people that got fired, we got the Giants who were perpetually doing this season, going ahead and losing in the fourth quarter. And at some point, you got to ask the question, is it about the coach, right? If you can't have simple game management, it's like the equivalent of being like, 3 goals up, in our football, and then you're losing it in the last 10 minutes, and then you do it a few times. At some point, you're just going to be like, okay, hold on a second. Where's the game management here? Jacksonville Jaguars, that's a demoralizing defeat. And it's
awful, yeah.
And it's one of those ones that is very difficult to figure out how to fix. When a team completely shuts you down and you cannot do anything. They basically broke their will, to score 26 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough one to recover from this.
No, absolutely. Again, I'm not quite sure how they come back from that. The last game I just want to quickly mention, because you actually brought up the Giants, so let's talk about them. They had another double-digit comeback defeat against Chicago Bears, and Chicago Bears actually potentially, if they won 3 or 4 on the bounce now, potentially looking at playoffs. But this game turned on another concussion to Jackson Dart, who, you know, the Giants were doing well. He got stuck in concussion protocol again. Cameron Wilson comes in and they lose all momentum. And, you know, Chicago end up winning 24-20. But for me, the biggest concern I have in this is actually the health of Dart. And it's not the fact that, you know, it's you can't. I think this is whether it's a personal problem for him or a league or a team problem or a league problem. He keeps getting hit. There's just no protection. And whether, you know, is that the fourth time this season he's been in concussion protocol and taken out of games?
Yeah.
That's not good for a really promising quarterback. He's either got to release it earlier, he's got to go down earlier, not leading with his shoulder too much or whatever it is. And he is one way or another going to be looking at a short career if things don't change.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where, you know, you're a rookie quarterback and people always say you need to learn how to go down and protect yourself, you know, as much as possible. It was just, you know, the little things, you know, around, you know, not just trying to be superhuman, right? You know, if the play is not there, you know, and you can see someone just, you know, coming towards, throw the ball away.
Yeah.
I throw the ball away and leave to fight another day, right? You know, so because there's no point, you know, trying to be superhuman. And I don't know whether a lot of that was coming from the coach, you know, whether the coach was really, you know, putting the pressure. There was that incident that happened where they went, I think it was 2-3 games ago, where they went into the blue tent and then the coach, you know, was going in there to figure out whether he was going to play or not. Was it Jackson Dart? Or no, I think it was Neighbors. It might have been, maybe it was Jackson Dart. I can't remember. I'm sure people are going to remind us. But, you know, they almost seemed like, you know, there was this tension, you know, that was going on in the Giants because, you know, it seemed like, you know, you had a quarterback, Daniel Jones, you let him go, you know, he looked like he was decent, then he was not, and then everybody was like, it was all Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones goes over to the Colts and now he's shining. So people then start to ask the question, maybe he was the coach, right? Maybe he wasn't just the quarterback. I think they had to make changes. They've made changes. Would it help them? Probably not. It might be just a look at next season, making sure that, you know, with their rookie quarterback, they get him the right kind of support. You know, it might be the same kind of thing that happened in the Bears, you know, where they sacked Eberflus halfway through the season. They rided it out until the end of the season, and now they've got Ben Johnson, and now, you know, Caleb Williams is looking decent. So
yeah,
one of those.
I think the message is clear there for rookie quarterbacks is that they hit different in the NFL, right? This isn't college football. This is the NFL. You're going to get absolutely squashed by these guys, right? These guys hit so much harder. You have to protect yourself more. And the best example of this is it's Griffin III.
Yeah.
You know, great prospect. Had you know, he was he pick one or one of the highest pick quarterbacks in whatever draft year it was?
Yeah, he was
for Washington.
Washington, yeah.
And looked great. But again, he kept being hit. He kept leading with his elbow and picked up a really bad injury. I think it was on one of these where he could have gone down earlier, but he gets hit. I think he does his cruciate or whatever and out for a long time. Just lost his place at the side, couldn't get back fit, and then he's out of the league.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, you look at him, you look at Dart, you look at Jaden Daniels, who's suffered obviously a really bad injury in the last couple of weeks. You just hope that they're gonna, you know, unfortunate injuries. These injuries always happen. Again, you look at Tua certainly when it comes to concussions, there's a really good example of that as well. They've just got either the team or themselves have to protect these guys more, especially as rookies who are just used to getting hit by college guys. But let's wrap up week 10 there. But I think what we wanted to end this weekend talking a little bit about the reaction and the fallout from Marshawn Kneeland's passing. Obviously, we touched on it last week in our predictions episode. Obviously, this is the first weekend of action, obviously, since his tragic death. And obviously there was minute silences in all the games. But Eddie, I know you wanted to spend some time talking about this, not only how the NFL have handled it, but also how your Dallas Cowboys have also handled this as well.
Yeah, I mean, incredibly sad situation all around. The tragic news came out last week. Marshawn Kneeland lost his life, and obviously Cowboys were on a bye. Obviously this weekend, but it was really good to see the NFL. Just pay some attention. And there's a lot of times, the NFL, sometimes it's like, you don't know. They do different courses and things like that, and they promote a lot of things. But I think it was good to kind of get this league wide recognition for what was and must be an incredible tough time for a lot of the players. They sent out a memo to the teams, to do a moment of silence for Marshawn over the weekend. So a lot of tributes by lots of players. In the game in Germany, there was a minute of silence as well. He was beamed up on the screen, so that was really good. The Cowboys, obviously, they've been out of the spotlight a little bit. So this week was very tough. It was first time coming back into that locker room, to the facility where he used to play, and so that must have been triggering for a lot of the players. So there are lots of reports that they had an emotional team meeting. There were lots of therapists, present at the Star, and everyone was given space to really just kind of grieve and talk. And a lot of the players, described it as, really extremely emotional. One of the players, Solomon Thomas, he talked about processing the loss, and doing community work, together as part of the healing process. On game day, actually this Sunday, the Cowboys will wear a helmet decal. So for those who don't know what that is usually the things at the back of their helmet. Most times, most players might have like a sticker of their countries. Sometimes you see players who have dual nationality might have stickers behind that. Sometimes they promote different messages, like sometimes the pink ribbon when it's, breast cancer or things like that. So they'll be doing that, and they'll also be wearing, special pre-game shirts, as well. Dak Prescott has been speaking out, about this, talking about the player, really showing their leadership, which is really important, for the players. And it's going to be interesting how the team, comes out, and plays the game that would very much be an emotional game for them, even though they're playing the Raiders. And I think they're away from home, in this game. I think that is they're playing the Raiders away from home. So they're not at the AT&T stadium, but they're playing the Chiefs the next game. So we'll see. But I think it's been commendable. I think the visibility, I think the effort that everyone, has, played throughout this. The NFL has got to have some credit. Dallas Cowboys, I think they've handled this incredibly well, for their players, but also for everyone around. I think, a lot of the media outlets, they've been really considerate and respectful. What must be a very difficult time, for the families, as well. And we've got to, pause and recognize, that, that the family, whatever we are processing, the family must be going through it a lot harder than we can ever imagine. But it just goes to show that, yes, it's football, but people come first. And so it's always important to, talk. People are struggling. I know we say that a lot, even in the UK here, to talk to people and prioritize, the mental health. But I think, you know, this week was credit to everyone, you know, who's been involved in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And help is always there when you need it. Eddie, I normally ask you to take me home, but I think you've done a really good job. Really good job summing everything up there. So I think that's probably the perfect time, a perfect way to end this week at Across the Gridiron. So look, thanks everyone for watching. We'll be back later in the week with our predictions. Until then, we'll see you soon.
I'm the bad guy. I'm the